Dear Ajahn, could you please something about boredom in practice? So, I can. I could. I will. In the 29 years of my practice, there have been some moments of boredom. So one thing that Ajahn Amaro once said when I was talking with him about boredom is that what you'll notice is there has to be a strong sense of self present for the experience of I'm bored. And so then we can do some investigation. Who is it that's bored? Where is boredom? What does boredom feel like as a feeling? Which part of the body is boredom based in? Is it in the teeth? Is it in the blood? Boredom, dare I say it, you won't like it. Boredom is the result of laziness. Because we have a great deal of tools at our disposal that we can use as reflective and contemplative. We have a great range of samatha practices to brighten and gladden the mind. So if you're sitting feeling bored, it means you're not doing the thing that you could do, many of the things that you could do to make the mind wholesome. At the same time, it's inevitable. Sometimes there's a bit of laziness. Sometimes we try really hard for a period of time and then we slacken off. If we try really hard for a period of time and then we slacken off, probably boredom is the result. So if you want to approach it as, if you want to brighten the mind, then there's the anusatis. One can recollect Lord Buddha, recollect the striving of the Bodhisattva, recollect the process of enlightenment. Normally for me that gives feelings of gratitude. And feeling grateful is a very lovely feeling. It's something that we can do sometimes, is just ask oneself, the blessings present in my life right now in this moment. Well, ask yourself, are there any? Are there blessings present in your life in this moment? And then we think of them, and we think of who in our life has been a blessing, what opportunities we've met that were a blessing, and allow oneself to feel grateful. And this is a bit like mudita citta. We can rejoice in the good fortune that we have. The Dhammanusati, recollect which of the teachings touched your life more deeply, and recollecting that the practice will eventually lead to, well, in the beginning and in the middle, as we chant in the morning, chanting beautiful in the beginning, beautiful in the middle, practice does reduce our suffering from the very beginning. It's already reducing the suffering, so we begin to get some answers to the fact of suffering. We begin to get some tools, things that we can do to lessen, reflect, gently uproot. So there's a lot to be grateful for. So that's taking more of a samatha approach, taking a little bit unwholesome mind state. But see, a little bit unwholesome mind state, if we don't wrestle with it, can become a very unwholesome mind state. So I'm bored can become I'm very bored can become I'm completely fed up. I'm completely fed up can become bye, out of here. And some of the things people do to avoid the feeling of boredom, that's where it gets quite dangerous. And there was a discussion at Amaravati when I was there many years ago about the Bhikkhus Vihara having Wi-Fi. And one of the monks brought up his concern that no one was really keeping an eye on how much the monks were using their portable devices in their room or what they were looking them on, and someone said to Ajahn Sumedho, do you know how many portable devices with internet connection are currently present in the Bhikkhu Vihara? And he said, no. I can't remember the exact amount, but the monk told him the exact amount, and Ajahn Sumedho said, good Lord. Which is and then he gave a Dhamma talk to the bhikkhus. He says, having something at your disposal that you can distract yourself and entertain yourself, and whenever you have a moment of boredom, it would be difficult to see or experience the liberated mind or the purified mind or a very radiant mind. He said that boredom is something that we have to learn to practice with and through. One has to understand it, sit with it, and go through it. So if one wants to take the more vipassana approach, it's like, okay, 4 foundations of mindfulness. Is boredom in the body? As in terms of the 4-element body. Where is the boredom? Just be interested. We don't let, like, Ajahn Sumedho sometimes he says these things, these really fun things, fighting spirit. He says, don't let the kilesas walk all over you like you're a doormat. Put up a fight. And sometimes we need to say that to ourselves. The kilesas are walking over you like you're a doormat. So do something about it. Sincerely investigate the body. Where is the boredom? You'll find it's not there. What feelings are associated with boredom? Okay, it'll be in the heart area, probably. It won't be a very energetic. It won't be a very bright, vibrant. Probably a bit heavy. I'm bored. And what's that like? You can even say it to yourself. What's boredom like? And then feel, is there feelings in the face? And then ask, who is it that's bored? One of the things that I think is really helpful, certainly, and I did this a lot in my younger years, because in the early years of bhikkhu training, when you're adjusting to the lifestyle, there's a lot of, it's painful to go against craving for and craving not for. When there's a lot of it, it's quite painful. And then something that was helpful is to consider people who had more coarse suffering. So as I'm suffering, I ask myself, did you eat today? Yes, I ate today. Do you have clothing? Yes, I have clothing. Do you have any diseases? No, I don't have diseases. Is anybody threatening your life? No, my life isn't being threatened. Am I being tortured? Nobody's torturing me. Okay. Is there bombs exploding in the monastery? No. And then we're going to recollect what experiences is like for several billion people who live under the poverty line in the world. And it's like, it's a matter of perspective. And also we remind ourselves, like Luang Por Chah said, the suffering that we meet in the process of practice is suffering that leads to the end of suffering. Whereas if we're not engaging this practice, trying to cultivate generosity, ethics, and mental cultivation, then it's just suffering with no end. So there's all sorts of ways we can reflect on it, but this practice of trying to identify where the feeling is, and then notice, is it changing? And you'll find that it is. Whatever sensitivity you've been able to develop, strength in your mindfulness, you're having a look in that area, where is the feeling of boredom? You'll find that there is feeling there. Is it a solid, unchanging feeling? You'll find that it's not. And so one of the reasons I like to observe the breath in the chest area is that you can kind of breathe through and around feelings associated with mind states. And while you're doing that, you've got your breath as your kind of anchor, and you can observe other feelings changing while you do that. And then you can have very nice insights as you notice feelings change and cease. You can, if the mindfulness is good, if the practice is consistent, this is a kind of practice that can give rise to vipassana jnana, a deep insight knowledge. But one has to have some centeredness and presence of mind, and then really noticing flux, cessation, flux, cessation, flux, cessation. And what's really interesting for contemplatives, when we're deeply committed and we do more practice, is that you notice the way mind states cease and change more. So when mindfulness is a bit fuzzy, a bit weak in the beginning stages of practice, when a mind state comes in the mind, it tends to kind of invade and occupy the mind, and we believe it fully, and we're kind of lost for that period of time. When you cultivate the practice of noticing mind states change and cease, even while you're experiencing it, there'll be the awareness that this will change, this too will pass. And it gets interesting to observe it, the feelings associated with the mind states. There was one monk that was angry, living with Luang Por Chah, and Luang Por Chah said, "Good." We said, "What do you mean good?" "Good. Go back to your kuti and be angry all day." And the monk went back to his kuti and he found he couldn't be angry all day. Came back to Luang Por. "I tried, Luang Por, but after an hour or two I wasn't angry anymore." And see, it's a very good teaching, isn't it? Because he didn't say it's bad and you have to be contentious with it. Okay, really do it fully, see how long it lasts. And the monk noticed that it stayed for some time and ceased. So we can do this with any of our mind states. And we also have to know when we're really inspired and elated and joyful, that will change too. And Luang Por Anand is always saying, "Mai yin di, mai yin lai." Don't allow the mind to fall into too much delighting or not delighting. Try to keep that equilibrium. And contentment is a really important subject. So we try to cultivate an attitude of contentment. And one of the important ingredients of contentment is to recognize what has been given and to be grateful. Not from the point of view of saying you should be grateful, but actually genuinely recognizing, relatively speaking, as a being in samsara, look what we have. And really acknowledging the blessings that we have and feeling joy about that. And then we can't expect the mind to come and sit, we can't expect the mind to incline towards wholesome, illustrious mind states every time. It will kind of, it is a practice of effort. That's why Lord Buddha talks about the four great efforts. We have to make the effort to bring about wholesome mind states. We have to make the effort to abandon the unwholesome. We have to make the effort to prevent unwholesome states from arising. We have to make the effort to maintain that which we have cultivated. So it's a path of effort. A lot of that effort is quite subtle. Keeping the mind within wholesome parameters, learning how to use your reflective mind and your reflective meditations and your samatha practices to encourage yourself and keep going. And, with the right attitude, boredom itself becomes interesting. It's like, oh, boredom. Where's that? Where is that? What is that? Who is that? And when you start to apply these more spiritual qualities, some investigation, it's interesting. So the next two questions are what I would call speculative, not particularly related to our practice. I'm not even sure I'm going to answer them. These are questions more along the lines of how does a Sotapanna's fruit go? How does a stream enterer take his insight with him to the next life? Is an arahant capable of communicating with beings from that realm? Does that make it is that a soul? Is that similar to God? So basically, these speculations we need to understand. Greed, hatred and delusion is our challenge. Greed, hatred and delusion is based upon ignorance. Ignorance means not knowing. So we have to, when we take, Buddhism is a teaching for spiritual adults. We have to be grown up, and we have to take the teachings on the chin. When Lord Buddha says our problem is ignorance, we have to admit that we don't know. Because we don't know, we're deluded. Okay, this is where we're at. And so, if you know that you're ignorant and deluded, it's pointless contemplating the nature of the mind of an arahant. It's like you can't see it, you can't work it out. Lord Buddha has said this is not something that thoughts, it's incomprehensible. You're starting from the wrong place. A self with a doubt is not going to understand the reality of a being that's realized not self. It's we're on the other shore, wondering about what the other shore is like. And you can't work it out from here. What you can feel confident about is that when you have an experience of Nibbana yourself, when you begin to experience Vipassana Jnana, and you have an experience of the self-view disappearing for a period of time, and a lovely, lucid, clear presence present without a self-view affecting the mind, then you'll begin to understand. That's the beginning of glimpsing it's possible to experience nama and rupa without sakkaya ditthi, without the self-view being present. You continue your practice. So this is our goal now. Our goal now is to practice sincerely enough to have some vipassana insight. When your practice develops further, through weakening, uprooting some of the delusion and ignorance, then you may glimpse what Tanajananand calls temporary liberations. You may experience the enlightened state. And if you have that experience and you notice that there's no self present, no world present, if the mind doesn't attain the fruit at the first time it experiences such a state, it becomes a memory. But at least it's a very profound memory, and what you will remember when the latent kind of habits of perceiving things as a self come back, what you will likely remember is that in that experience there was no self. And so that will help you understand that these kind of wanderings. And then another thing we can say to ourselves, I mean, it's fair enough to wonder on one level, but we also have to just be mindful that we're wondering, we are wondering and wondering. We are wondering from a confused space. And so that kind of wandering from a position of if you're sitting in a dark corner, you're not going to see clearly everything. So there just needs to be some humility that we acknowledge that the mind is affected by ignorance and delusion. The ultimate nature of the mind is not something that can be worked out through thinking, speculative doubt, but Lord Buddha and the great practitioners explained to us that if we practice a lot of breath meditation and walking meditation and keep contemplating these three characteristics, you will experience it for yourself. That's the wonderful thing about Buddhism, to be experienced individually by the wise, apparent here and now for those who practice rightly and correctly. So there are some traditions that the Vajrayana tradition tries to explain the enlightened state. They call it as the mind of clear light. So boundless, no self there, no four elements there, empty space, white-coloured, transparent. So you can't really make a self out of it. You can't make a past, present and future out of it. You can't make a me and other people about it. Empty, vast space which is light and bright, self-illuminated and transparent. Okay. And a feeling, we're contemplating what Sariputta said about his experience yesterday. Sariputta says there was no perception of the four elements, no perception of the fine elements in the other world, heavenly world, no mind objects at all including no sense of self, the only perception was Nibbana is the cessation of suffering. So, we have to practice until we experience that. Now, the curious thing is it does occur in the biographies of the great Arahants that sometimes Buddhas and Arahants come and teach them. What I would like to point out is the people who have those experiences are people who are stream enterers with fourth jhana and onwards. This is an important thing to notice. So once the mind is very significantly purified, that kind of mind seems to be receptive to receiving some help from completely purified minds. Whether the enlightened mind is coming down from Nibbana, I don't know, because keep in mind that it's described as timeless. It might be the case that prayers and vows that Arahants made in their final life, while they were in the world, when they dedicate the merit of their vast, pure jhanas, because the Buddha says jhanas are imponderable. The benefits of cultivating jhana is imponderable, it's amazing, mind-blowing. It may be the case that when beings like Luang Por Man and Luang Por Chah dedicate merit to any beings in samsara who are karmically connected to them, they personally make a vow to help them grow in Dhamma. It might be possible that those kind of aspirations, when a person with a karmic connection, his mind is sensitive enough that something comes. So one of the things that Ajahn Anan describes or explains, is that merit is a thing. Merit is a thing. Can't see it really, but it's a thing, it's a condition. It's a result of skillful actions. When the Buddha went to Mahaparinibbana, he didn't take the merit with him, because the Nibbana is a place where there's no things. But his merit didn't disappear. As a condition, some of the merit of the Buddha stays in the condition. So how does that manifest? So that's where I think some of these things begin to manifest in the world of conditions. The power of their prayers, the power of their determinations, the power of your merit when you make your mind sensitive enough, receptive enough to receive such blessings. I mentioned the other day that I had a dream of Luang Por Man and felt like it was him, but I was assumed that was a result of the merit that I'd made from having paid respects to the four holy sites in India. It's a lot of merit. The merit of keeping the Bhikkhu Vinaya strictly. And so I didn't have the sense that he was a solid being that came to visit me as a solid being. I have a sense that he was emptiness and purity, radiating metta. And it was very encouraging. So the best way to relate to these kind of speculations is you can encourage yourself, when I practice well and when I get to that level, I will understand this. This is something I will understand as a result of my own practice. And so with that, I encourage you all to keep practicing. May you all have vipassana jnanas, glimpse not self, experience the mind and body without the self-view. May you experience the liberated state, and may that resolve all doubts in you. I wish you every success in your practice.